Hey guys, Jay here with Word of Advice TV, and by now I have quite a few HVAC videos out there on how to repair an air conditioner and a furnace, mostly all residential, and oftentimes in the comment section I get asked, how did I even get into the HVAC field? How do you become an HVAC tech? How did I get my first job? What the pay is, and all of those type of questions. So I thought I would finally make a video on this topic and just describe how I became an HVAC tech and what my journey was to get there. So when I was about 20 years old, I was a waiter in a restaurant. I was married, just freshly married, and I had just finished my accounting degree, a 2-year accounting degree. And when I finished my accounting degree, 2 years, I realized that I was making more as a waiter than I would be making as an accountant if I got a job in the accounting field, like as a banker or something. So, of course, that made me scratch my head. And I thought, all right, let me ask around, let me do some research and find out how long would it take, like how much more schooling or experience would I have to get in the accounting field or the business field in order for me to make decent money. And it turned out that I would need at least another 2 years of schooling, or 2 or 3 years, become like a master or a CPA, before I would make any good money in the accounting field. So since I was making more as a waiter, I decided to hold off on getting a job in accounting, because it would take me at least a year to get experience and stuff and get good at it. And the idea of being stuck in a cubicle didn't really satisfy me that much either. I mean, the whole reason I became an accountant is because, when I just went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And since my sister was a CPA, she was like, go for accounting, you're not going to regret it. So that's what I did. But after 2 years, I was getting second thoughts. And that's when I, started looking at other fields, and my conclusion was that I should do something with my hands, just so I'm a little bit more useful in life, not just stuck in a cubicle for the rest of my life. So my options were either automotive, mechanical, electrician, or a plumber. I didn't even really think about HVAC. I guess I didn't really even realize that field existed at that point of time. So I talked to a journeyman commercial guy, and he convinced me that HVAC is totally the way to go because it combines pretty much all those trades into one. And, after talking to him for like half an hour, he told me, dude, this is the way to go. You're not going to regret it. And after talking with him, I decided, you know what? He's right. I'm going to go for this. So I applied for HVAC in a technical community college. It was a 2-year course to get me an associate degree, applied associate's science degree, I think it was, AAS. But anyways, 1 year was residential and 1 year was commercial. You get your certificates and you get the degree, you get your licenses and all of that, all while you're in school. So during the day, I would be a waiter, and then for night school from like 5 to 9 for the next 2 years, 4 semesters, I was having HVAC school. So that's how my HVAC journey started. And don't forget that before that, I was an accountant, and I did not know anything about any of the trades, including HVAC. Definitely nothing about HVAC. In fact, when we had our first quiz, the teacher did a quiz just to see how much we do know. I remember in the first quiz, it asked us what kind of screwdrivers are there, what are the 2 basic screwdrivers, and I wrote, there's a flat and then there's an X instead of a flathead and a Phillips. So the teacher kind of laughed at me for that, but I was completely clueless in anything to do with HVAC. There was about 28 students to begin with. It's a 2-year course, and we kept the same teacher throughout the 2 years. And I believe by the end of the 2 years, somewhere, in the first or second semester, 3 people dropped out, and 25 guys stayed till the end. But by the end of the first semester, which is 3 months, by the end of the first semester, more than half of us already had our first job in the HVAC field. And a lot of the guys were like me. They did not have any prior experience in HVAC. So that was pretty amazing. I mean, even back then, this was like I said, 7 or 8 years ago, back then, HVAC guys were in high demand. The employers would be coming into the schools and recruiting people right when they get into the schooling. So just like a lot of guys in my class, I got my first HVAC job. It was a pay cut, but I did it just so I could start gaining the experience. I started out at $12.50 an hour, and it was like an appraisal of 3 months, or whatever they call that, where they just watch you, see your performance, and in 3 months they bump you up to $15 an hour, which is still not much, but in 3 months I went up to $15 an hour, and I stayed at that company for 1 year. And by the end of that 1 year, being that I didn't have a lot of work, being the new guy, I primarily just did a bunch of furnace inspections and AC inspections, and when the season for those was over, there wasn't a lot of work to do. So by the end of the year, I volunteered to become an installer. So for the next month or two, I got to ride along with these old veteran installers, and we installed furnaces and ACs, and that's when I kind of learned that I probably don't really want to become an installer. I mean, it's a great field, it's still good, but it is a little bit harder on your body than the service side of the industry. I mean, and the straw that broke the camel's back, one time we had a house where they had white steps. I mean, they had white carpet on the steps, and there was no slide door in the basement, and we had to haul out a cast iron, really old cast iron boiler upstairs, up the white stairs with two guys, and my goodness, that boiler was just a total backbreaker. And I had some times where we had to work in a house that, didn't have any heat. It was an abandoned house, and it was, negative 20 outside. As you're trying to install the furnace and hook up the gas piping and the wires, you can see your breath. And needless to say, that was pretty cold. But I'm not complaining. I mean, in the HVAC industry, this is pretty normal. You're oftentimes either really, really hot or really, really cold. I mean, besides all the good stuff of the industry, there's a lot of bad stuff to go with it as well. But you do get paid handsomely for going through all of that. But anyway, after helping out with installs for a month or two, I did realize that I probably don't want to be doing install for the rest of my HVAC career. And about that time, it's been a year now since I was in school. Or actually, no, it's been a year and a half. So I was on my third semester. A guy from a utility company came in, and he was recruiting. He did his whole little promotional spiel, why it's so great to work for them and all that. They had HVAC, heating and cooling, only service, no install. And they also did not do attic units, which for me was awesome because, the few times I had to crawl around in really hot attics and cramped spaces where you could barely get through, you have to do the Spider-Man walk. After you do a few of those, you realize that attic units are not so fun. And here in Minnesota, there's not so many of them, so I'm fortunate with that. I didn't have to deal with that too much. I know in the southern states, you guys probably have a lot more of them. But anyway, this guy came in, he was doing his spiel, he was telling us why it's so great. And at that time, I was making $17 an hour at that first company. And then this guy was offering 25 to 27 from the start. So of course, it was a no-brainer. They had guaranteed hours, guaranteed 40 hours a week. And you're on call only once every 12 days instead of, I was on call a lot at the first company. So being that I was a new guy, but at this company, there was no big seniority gaps. Everybody was pretty much treated the same. I mean, of course, the senior guys got paid more, but other than that, the on-calls and the orders were all assigned pretty equally. So, of course, that was a no-brainer for me. I jumped ship onto that job, and I started working there, and that's where I learned about all the other appliances as well. The washers, the dryers, the fridges, the ovens, and all of that type of stuff. I wasn't intending to learn it, but that was kind of a prerequisite of working there. So aside from doing HVAC there, only service work from then on, I also learned all of that stuff as well, which is good knowledge to have. I mean, I can now fix any of the appliances in my house. So I'm definitely not complaining about that. And this whole time, job 1 and job 2, while I was in school, both of them provided company vehicles. So I could actually take the company vehicle after work to school to do my night school, the HVAC night school. And before I knew it, the fourth semester was upon me. And by this time, most of the guys in the class, they were either on their second or third job. And that's not because we got fired from the first job. The second or third job just simply offered us something that was way better than the first job could offer. So we moved on. But anyways, at this point, I was at the point where I had to make a decision. Do I want to go commercial or do I want to remain residential? Because the deadline was approaching, where I could apply for the pipe fitter union. And if you wanted to go commercial, joining the pipe fitter union was the best route to take to become a journeyman and all of that. So I had to make a decision. I talked to the teacher, I talked to some advisors, and what they concluded was, for most of the guys in the class, for them it would be beneficial and, more benefits, more pay to go commercial. But the gig that I had, it was already on par with the commercial stuff, what the union had to offer, if not slightly better. So I had to decide, do I want to go commercial or do I want to go residential and stay with service, just stay at the company that I'm at? So after thinking about it, if I went commercial, that would mean that I would become an apprentice and all that in the union. I would need to go to night school for another 3 or 4 years to become a journeyman. And the school I would need to go to is an hour away from where I live, and I would need to go there 2 or 3 times a week. So, that alone kind of turned me off. And to top it off, when you're in a union, as far as I could gather, there's definitely a hierarchy there. So if you're a beginner, if you're, first year apprentice, you're going to get the crappiest jobs, the crappiest shifts, and the union will decide which employer you get to work for. So the first couple of years are not so great when you're starting out in the union, when you're just learning all your ropes. So all of those facts, made me eventually decide that, I think I'm just going to stick to residential, doing service work alone and no install work, and the gig that I have is just great. I think I'm going to just stick to that. So that is what I did. And I also didn't really find the fact of, going on the roof for rooftop units and commercial, going on the roof in, 120 degree days, or if it's super cold outside in Minnesota, it gets like -20, -30, freeze my butt off on the roof, every single season. It's hard on the body. That too didn't really appeal to me as much, whereas in residential, I'm usually in somebody's house, working in a nice, warm environment. So the decision was not very hard for me to make. But I am by no means bashing the commercial side of the industry or the union. I know quite a few HVAC guys that are in the commercial industry or in the union. They're journeymen and they love it. In fact, the guy that recommended HVAC to me initially, he retired just recently, and his pension is like $8,000 a month from the union. So that's not bad, right? And he was trying to get me into the commercial side of the industry to do pneumatic controls after he left. But in order to get into that, I would have to go through that night school for at least 3 years in order to qualify to get there. So I decided against that. I would just stick in the residential field. And up to date, I am still happily a residential service technician. So there you have it. That's my story. And if there's any commercial guys out there that do commercial work, or if you're in the union, or if you have an interesting story of your own that you can share, I implore you to please share your story in the comment section below. Or if you have any suggestions or tips. I mean, I have pretty much zero exposure to the commercial side of the business. Maybe just a little bit I bumped into, rooftop units on my previous job. But other than that, I have very little commercial exposure other than the school. So if you have experiences, suggestions, or tips, or if you think that that side of the industry is way better, if you could talk about that in the comment section below, I would love to hear your stories. Who doesn't love stories, right? But anyway, I hope you enjoyed my story. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to mash that like button on the way out, and we'll see you next time. And if you're still here and not in the comment section below, let me share a cool story with you about positivity. Having a positive outlook on life is awesome, and this story definitely shows it. I heard it not too long ago, and I really liked it. So anyway, there was this one king, right? And he had a servant that kind of bugged him. And the reason he bugged him is because that servant, all the time, no matter what happened, would tell him, "King, it's all good, man. This is all good. This is for our own good." A horse would die. The servant would say, "It's all good." The king would say, "What are you talking about? The horse died. How's that good?" The wagon, the wheels would fall off. Servant would say, "It's all good." The king would just always get ticked by that. But anyways, even though he would get ticked off by this servant, he was one of his favorite guys, so he dealt with it. One time, they went hunting in a forest, and as they were hunting, the servant accidentally shot off the king's finger. The king was really furious, and to top it off, the cherry on top, the servant says, "King, I'm so sorry, but it's all good, King. This is all good. This is for our good. This is going to be good in the end." And the king was so mad about that. He's like, "Are you joking me? You just shot my finger off and you're telling me it's all good? You know what? I'm done with your stuff, man. I'm going to put you in prison." So when they get back, he throws him in prison, and 3 years pass. That guy is sitting in prison for 3 years. In 3 years, the king decides to go hunting again in the forest. Now, this is back in the day, right? This is before they had cars and helicopters and all that. So he's in the forest hunting, and he gets surrounded by a tribe of cannibals, right? They eat people. And they kill his guards, they tie up the king, and they're carrying him on that stick, right? So as they're carrying him, one of the warriors, he looks at him, and he's like, "Whoa, guys, put him down right now." They're like, "Wow, what are you talking about? What happened?" He's like, "Look at his hand. This guy is not wholesome. He has a finger missing. We can't bring this guy as a sacrifice." And all the warriors are like, "Oh, bummed out, man, I can't believe it. We had such a good catch, a king." And they're like, "Whatever, king. You know what? This is your lucky day." They untie him to get out of here. They told him to get out of here, and away the king went. He comes back to his kingdom, and the king was just so joyful to be alive that he didn't get eaten and roasted and eaten. So he takes that guy out of prison, right, his servant. The servant comes to his presence, And the king tells him, hey, I'm really sorry for putting you into prison for 3 years, but actually having my finger gone was good for me in the end, so I'm very grateful for you. And the servant says, King, it's no problem. It's all good, man. I'm thankful that you put me in prison. And the king, again, gets ticked a little bit, and he's like, what are you talking about? You just spent 3 years of your life in prison, and now you're telling me it's all good? And the servant says, well, king, just think about it. If I was with you on that hunt, I have all my fingers and body parts intact. So guess who they would have eaten instead of you?